Hey guys, go ahead and settle in. Dim your lights, grab a blanket if you're somewhere that allows blankets, and let's just drift. Tonight we're beginning a long, slow wander through one of history's more mellow rabbit holes. Lost civilizations, the ones that just slipped out the back door of history without leaving a clear forwarding address. No jump scares, no dramatic lightning crashes, just quiet ruins, desert winds, half-remembered languages, and the kind of mysteries that make archaeologists sigh deeply into their coffee mugs. So, let's begin our little nighttime journey. Just breathe, relax, and let yourself sink into the calm absurdity of ancient people who built gigantic stone cities and then collectively decided, all right, I'm done, and vanished. Let's float over to our first forgotten group, one that managed to confuse scholars for over a century, mostly because they were incredibly organized for a civilization that left behind almost no written record. A bold choice, honestly. The Nabateans, the people who turned sand into a capital city. So, the Nabateans. You may not recognize the name instantly, but you definitely know their most famous piece of real estate, Petra. Yes, that Petra. The pink carved into the rock postcard city that looks like someone tried to design an ancient luxury hotel using a butter knife and the side of a cliff. But long before Instagram influencers treated it like a scenic backdrop for questionable outfit choices, Petra was the beating heart of a desert empire run by people who were, well, mysterious by design. The Nabateans didn't write much down. They preferred an oral tradition, and that makes them perfect for a sleepy history video because honestly, when a civilization refuses to leave receipts, we're forced to glide through what we think happened, gently, and without any strong opinions. So, who were they? Imagine a group of highly skilled nomadic traders who suddenly realized they could make a lot more money if they stopped wandering and built a giant rock-cut city along the main spice routes. That's basically the Nabatean business model. They controlled trade in frankincense and myrrh. Yes, those very same gifts from the Christmas story, the ones that sound fancy but no one has ever actually bought on purpose. The Nabateans took those fragrant little products and turned them into an empire of desert aromatherapy, essentially. Now, Petra itself wasn't just pretty, it was clever. Their engineers were obsessive. They carved channels into the rock to catch rainwater, stored it in massive cisterns, and basically performed desert magic long before modern plumbing. These people looked at the driest place on the planet and said, needs a water park. So everything looked great for them. Wealthy traders, brilliant engineers, gorgeous architecture. And then, one day, poof, the civilization faded. Not instantly, but gradually, like someone slowly turning the brightness down on a screen. What happened? Well, water routes changed. Trade routes moved. Rome took an interest because Rome had a habit of looking around and saying, "This seems nice. I'll take it." And after the Romans stepped in, the Nabateans slowly blended into the broader regional population. No dramatic collapse, no fiery destruction, just a gentle dissolving, like sugar disappearing in tea. Honestly, as far as disappearing acts go, it's one of the classier ones. But since we're here to drift deeper into our nighttime labyrinth of vanished cultures, let's gently move from the deserts of Jordan to the forests of the Pacific Northwest, where a civilization vanished before Europeans even realized it existed. The people of Cahokia, North America's forgotten metropolis. Now we drift to a place that looks nothing like Petra. Imagine dense forests, flat rivers, mosquitoes,
And then, towering above it all, a city bigger than medieval London, complete with grand plazas, carefully aligned mounds, and a population that could have reached 20,000. This was Cahokia. And no, you're not supposed to know about it. Most people don't, because historians, for reasons unclear, tend to skip over the part where North America had a complex urban center centuries before Columbus was even a glint in his parents' eyes. Cahokia was located in what is modern-day Illinois, which, for many people, is already a plot twist, since the average person associates Illinois with cornfields, toll roads, and the occasional aggressive goose, not lost civilizations. But around the year 1050, Cahokia blossomed. Huge earthen mounds were constructed, including Monk's Mound, which is still the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. Think of it as an ancient high-rise made out of dirt and determination. And then there were the wood henges. Yes, wood henges, large circular arrangements of massive wooden posts that acted as solar calendars. Imagine Stonehenge, but softer, more biodegradable, and far more likely to be eaten by termites. Cahokia was busy, too. Markets, ceremonies, politics, people living normal lives with normal problems like agriculture and community drama, and probably someone insisting they could predict the seasons better than everyone else because they stared at the sun a couple times. But then, by the 1300s, Cahokia emptied out. The houses were abandoned, the plazas quieted, the mounds remained, but the people faded. Why? Well, pick your favorite theory. Climate change? Overpopulation? Soil depletion? Flooding? Intergroup conflict? Economic decline? Or, my personal favorite, a combination of factors, which is historian shorthand for your guess is as good as ours. Cahokia didn't burn. It didn't collapse in a day. It simply slipped away, leaving behind a landscape of silent mounds and unanswered questions. And with that, we'll gently drift across the ocean where another lost civilization spent centuries confusing everyone with its rock structures, mysterious script, and extremely dramatic oceanside real estate. The Rapa Nui civilization, the Moai builders of Easter Island. Next, we float over to Easter Island, a place so remote that even modern airplanes look at the map and go, "Really? There?" Easter Island, known as Rapa Nui, is famous for its moai, those giant stone heads that look like they're judging you silently from the hillside, and they probably are. They have that vibe. The Rapa Nui people carved nearly 900 of these statues. 900. That's an absurd number of stone heads for a population that, at its peak, maybe reached 10,000. It's like waking up one day and deciding everyone in your small town needs to build a life-size statue of their uncle for reasons. But the moai weren't just art. They represented ancestors, authority, lineage, and the process of carving and moving them required a level of social organization that makes modern project management look lazy. Now, the classic narrative, you may have heard, is that the Rapa Nui destroyed themselves by cutting down all their trees, the old eco-parable. They chopped down their last tree and realized too late what they'd done. Well, newer research suggests that's not quite accurate. Turns out rats probably ate the seeds of the palm trees. A rat-infested ecological disaster. Imagine spending centuries carving magnificent stone ancestors only to have your forests sabotaged by invasive rodents. That's a plot twist. But the decline of the Rapa Nui wasn't just ecological. European contact in the 1700s brought diseases, violence, slavery, and disruptions that devastated the population. By the time anyone wrote down observations, the society was already in survival mode. So did the Rapa Nui vanish? Not exactly.
Their descendants still live on the island today, but their pre-European society, its structure, its traditions, its full complexity, faded like a shoreline being slowly washed away. Another gentle disappearance. Another civilization sliding into the background of history, leaving behind more stone statues than actual explanations. And as we drift from the Pacific to South America, we land at the feet of another vanished culture, one that left behind some of the most confusing artwork in human history. The Nazca civilization, the artists no one could see. Let's float now over the dry plains of southern Peru. Flat, dusty, almost aggressively beige, and etched into the desert floor, giant shapes, birds, monkeys, spiders, lines stretching for kilometers. This is the Nazca civilization, creators of the world's most extra doodles. The Nazca lived around 200 BCE to 600 CE. Their potters were gifted, their textiles were vibrant. But what they're really known for are the Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs so large that they can only be fully seen from the air, which raises the extremely reasonable question, why would people without airplanes draw pictures only airplanes could appreciate? Well, we don't know. Because the Nazca, like many other polite but troublesome ancient cultures, didn't leave behind a clear explanation. Were they religious symbols? Astronomical calendars? Sacred pathways? Public art projects that got wildly out of hand? Probably a mixture. But since no one wrote down the user manual, future generations are left to interpret these lines with a level of guesswork normally reserved for assembling furniture without instructions. The Nazca civilization eventually declined due to droughts, shifting rivers, and environmental stress. Their farmlands suffered, and gradually their cities thinned out. And yet, their giant drawings remained, perfectly preserved by the dry
Climate. Silent. Unmoving. A visual whisper from a civilization that simply drifted off the historical map.